with Mr Abbott's social views.
Tony Abbott recently flew into the UK to meet ministers and face flack about his possible appointment as a trade advisor here. But today, Boris Johnson trumpeted Mr Abbott's credentials.
This is a guy who was elected by the people of the great liberal democratic nation of Australia. And you've been to Australia. It's an amazing country. It's a freedom-loving country. It's a liberal country. There you go. I think that speaks for itself.
Yes, I've had some discussions with members of the British government.
The confirmation of Mr Abbott's appointment as an unpaid trade advisor comes after he was given a rough ride by a committee of MPs earlier this week.
In 2012, you said that men are by physiology or temperament more adapted than women to exercise authority or to issue command.
Look, I'm not sure that I ever did say that.
Tony Abbott is from the right of Australia's raucous politics.
Get the witch!
A climate change sceptic who spoke at this rally, Mr Abbott incurred the wrath of his political opponents for his reported views of women.
He wants to know what misogyny looks like in modern Australia. He doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives, he needs a mirror.
And here, it's not only Labour MPs who've spoken out against Tony Abbott.
He's a misogynist. He has very poor views on LGBTQ rights, and I just don't think this is a man who should be anywhere near our Board of Trade.
But now he will be on the advisory group. This Brexit-focused government deciding that Mr Abbott's experience cutting trade deals for Australia trumps complaints about the man's character.
Back home, the federal government's handling of deadly coronavirus outbreaks in aged care homes dominated the agenda as politicians returned to Parliament for the first time in months. Cabinet ministers also criticised Victoria's handling of the pandemic, blaming the state's shutdown for contributing to the nation's first recession in almost 3 decades. Our Parliament House Bureau has the brief on the fortnight sitting.
Has adopted some brand new rules to minimise the risk of infection.
For the first time, those who can't make it to Canberra can take part via video link.
This is a big moment. We're allowing remote attendance at a parliament which has historically been face-to-face for very good reason. The first couple of weeks this is going to be put in place, I think it's a very good place to start.
Exactly, and it's going to have its ropey moments. Parliament is ropey at the best of times, isn't it?
Well, I'll defer to the Speaker there. It always seems to be a touch more ropey or challenging in the House. There's twice as many of them.
That's true, that's true.
Tony Smith, shall we go and see your room?
Let's do that.
Yep.
OK. Welcome to the People's House.
Oh, lovely to be here. We don't get to come in here too often.
Oh, well, this is the quietest it gets. So similar setup. People come on screen depending on what side they're seeking the call from.
Yeah, all right. Good luck tomorrow.
Well, thank you.
Time has concluded.
Federal Parliament returns today.
Parliament returns for the first time since Victoria's second deadly wave of COVID-19.
Tonight, are we lurching towards another lockdown?
We have 5,165 cases of coronavirus in Victoria.
The number of new cases in Victoria again edges towards 300. The big worry is nursing homes.
The full Stage 4 lockdown in Melbourne will be in force. And now everyone is holding their breath and hoping that this is as bad as it gets.
I know that across Victoria, many today, frankly, would have reached breaking point. This virus is taking a heavy toll.
But Scott Morrison's government will also come under closer scrutiny for its response to the aged care and Ruby Princess crises.
First to Victoria, where the number of coronavirus cases are heading down.
This was a week of hope where we're able to speak of the progress being made on vaccines. The instances of cases in Victoria turn the corner.
With politicians from across the country descending on a COVID-free capital, masks are now being worn inside the House.
Thank you. Thank you. So Parliament's back, a lot of focus on JobKeeper and JobSeeker legislation, also on aged care, but it looks a little bit different to what we're used to, doesn't it?
Yes, well, everyone's going around wearing masks in all the public areas like we are right now. And we've also got a bunch of MPs joining us via video link.
For the first time ever, which is, you know, for all of those people who've spent months now working from home, might be a bit surprised to know that we haven't been able to have remote Parliament up until this point.
Yeah, it's probably old news for people working from home who are used to doing a bit of Zoom. We've had, obviously, a lot of MPs who might have forgotten to mute or whose connections drop out. So it is just like a real-life work Zoom meeting, really.
Exactly, all of those issues that everybody's been dealing with for a long time.
It's an answered one for 12 months. This issue. Now, Mr Speaker.
If it persists, you might find yourself disconnected.
And with the masks, I mean, people in Victoria would be used to this by now, but we haven't had people around the building wearing masks like this at the moment, but everybody seems to be sticking to it so far.
I'd like to formally welcome our colleagues attending remotely for the first time.
It's important that we meet to assert our hope for the future. So this is an important day for sovereignty in Australia. It's an important day for ensuring that Australia's national interest is protected.
The signs that Australia's on the outer with Beijing have been clear for months, and now we know why.
One of China's top diplomats in Canberra has likened the relationship with Australia to a feuding marriage.
They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but at the National Press Club it was literally served up to one of China's top diplomats. Beef, barley and wine, all on the menu, and all the products that have had tariffs imposed on them.
Almost a holy trinity when it came to Australian trade, served straight up to Wang Xining. It was quite an event, one of the best speeches we've heard at the National Press Club in terms of its interest, its theatre, and its eloquence. Quite amazing to see.
And he wasn't backing down. He was saying, Australia, you have hurt our feelings by wanting an investigation into the coronavirus, and it showed how bitter relations have become.
I think his words were as blunt as the message on the recipe, right? He made it very, very clear what he was there to do. But I think it is really interesting that Beijing are using him increasingly in this battle. You know, I think we've kind of become used to China's approach, which is we're using trade measures, you know, things are being done in the shadows, behind the scenes. But I think they're starting to realise that they need to win the intellectual battle here as well, that they need to win the battle in the public space. They need to be able to mount very cogent arguments that get through to mainstream Australians, and Wang Xining has been the man to do that.
We should not let cold heart and dark mind cast a shadow over our partnership.
Mere hours after he had finished speaking, the federal government announced it was cracking down on deals that China might be securing with state governments, with universities, and saying that the Foreign Affairs Minister would have the power to tear up agreements like the contentious Belt and Road initiative with Victoria.
And it was a strategic and an anticipatory move from the federal government. They knew that Wang Xining was giving this appearance at the National Press Club. They had this in the back pocket and they presented it the next day. Again, it's another sort of audacious step in this really ever colder Cold War.
South Wales, 32,111 small businesses in Moncrief.
The first thing I did when I got here this week was went and found Helen Haynes, who's was a midwife before she got elected. I was like, Helen, if I give you the signal, you're on.
Lucky you had Helen Haynes. I had Chris Bowen offering. I was like, both me and Lisa have had a baby, so that's potentially 6 babies. As 7 babies is. Oh, sorry, 7 babies, because of course, is a huge change from where it was in 2007.
We are following all the relevant health advice. I'd ask my staff to work from home, like many in this place, I'm sure.
Daisy is on my teleconferences and then on my partner's Zooms, and we just sort of tag team because we're both working from home. And so it has allowed me to participate in more committees than I did before she was born.
It was so exciting yesterday that our colleague Kate Thwaites, who unfortunately can't be here for this chat and is also pregnant, gave the first speech virtually via video link into the Parliament going forward. On childcare too.
Yeah. Did it. Being able to use this technology today means that I started my day by dropping my daughter off at her early education centre.
I'll be the first senator from a major party in almost 20 years to give birth in office. So it is a bit of a change for the Senate, and you can see that in the rules in the Senate. They don't reflect the arrangements there are in the House to make these things a bit easier. So I think we've got a much further way to go in the Senate, and that's just because we haven't had as many women juggling these issues there, unlike the House.
You had people come up and try and touch you?
Well, no, because of COVID.
Oh, right.
Unexpected bonus out of COVID. They're not allowed, you know, within a...
Can't really elbow bump someone's pregnant belly.
That might induce labour.
Welcome to Capitol Hill. On what we can report is a sunny start to spring in the nation's capital.
Every single life matters, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Aren't the failures in aged care that Josh Frydenberg's talking about in Victoria your responsibility and the responsibility of the federal government? And did you consider offering your resignation to the Prime Minister because of those deaths and infections?
So yes, the responsibility for primarily funding and regulating the aged care sector is a Commonwealth responsibility. And we're being prepared for that when it gets to its completion.
Prime Minister talking about, Minister, on that commission, please.
The politicians returned to Canberra fresh off Richard Colbeck, the aged care minister, having a doozy at a Senate committee where he was unable to say how many people had died in aged care facilities during the coronavirus. And it really set up a clear divide between Labor and the government coming into this sitting week.
I think there was a real tactic here by Labor to go after Richard Colbeck. He was clearly a weak one in the pack, and if they were looking to claim a scalp in federal parliament, he was their best chance, and then they kind of got it in a censure motion, which is probably as good as they were going to get. But that performance before Parliament resumed really did show that Richard Colbeck wasn't in the same space as Victorians, particularly dealing with the coronavirus crisis. If he couldn't name how many people had died and how many people are being infected at a time when Victorians and Melburnians are hanging off those numbers every day because that's going to affect what they can do tomorrow, that's affecting their day-to-day life, it showed that disconnection between him and the public.
How many residents have passed away from COVID-19?
I'll just have to look up my latest report, Chair. That might take me a moment.
Yeah, what was so damaging about those questions was that they were dashboard questions. It reminded me of when John Howard was Prime Minister. He used to have a piece of paper in his pocket that would say the price of a litre of milk, a loaf of bread, the interest rates. These are the sorts of critical bits of information that you need to show that you're in touch with the outside world, let alone your portfolio.
He sits in that room directly behind us. It's the Senate. He copped pretty much all of Labor's questioning for the bulk of question time during this sitting fortnight. And it has given the opportunity for Labor to have something to fight with the government about, because there has been so much agreement largely during this virus.
Yeah, it's an area of great vulnerability. It was an area of great vulnerability before the pandemic. Now it's proven to be the one that's been picked off by this devilish virus. And in that vulnerability, there's been political opportunity for Labor.
Australia plunged into the worst recession for nearly a century.
The economy shrank by 7%.
Today, we are reporting these devastating numbers, but today, Australians are living them.
In many ways, it was a long time coming, but the news finally comes out that we are in a recession.
Finally.
An eye-watering
We're in a recession.
number.
Yeah.
GDP shrinking 7% in a quarter. It's unheard of, these levels, and it shows the state, the fragility of the economy.
Yeah, we have had an amazing year of amazing records. But this was the most unsurprising of those amazing records. We've had 28 years of consecutive growth. Suddenly, we've gone down 7% in one quarter. Now, this is bigger than anything we've seen since the Great Depression. And when you see it and hear it in that context, it's just gobsmacking. And it's another reminder about 2020 being one year of the ages.
Look, and this is, I think, part of what is going to be so difficult in the next couple of years with with the road out is the scale of this. You know, a 7% fall. Even in past recessions, we're not talking a scale of a 7% fall. And while the government points out, oh look, this isn't like other, you know, it wasn't caused by an underlying economic problem, it was caused by a health problem. The tools we have in our toolbox, the things that government and the Treasury Department are used to thinking about are things to change 0.25% here, to change maybe 2% here or there. But the sort of initiatives that you're going to need to help an economy come back from a 7% fall and an unemployment rate, you know, officially over 7%, climbing up to 10%, we're going to need initiatives on a scale we haven't even contemplated before. And I don't know how prepared government and bureaucrats are for that challenge.
And